right, we're going to take a look at taking data from a graph and writing it into a table. So we're going to go from a graph to a table. All of our data that we're looking at is going to be linear, so it's going to make a nice straight line. And we're going to see how to pull that data out of the graph and put it into a table. So the first thing I want to make sure I point out is that our input values are going to be our x values and our output values are going to be our y values. Sometimes you'll call the x values the domain and the y is the range. Sometimes it's input, sometimes it's output. We're going to look at x and y because each of these points that you see on this graph, we can write as an ordered pair as an x and y. So I'm going to start, let me highlight this first. This first point here on the left. And all I want to do is I want to write down what the ordered pair is for that point. So that point there is actually -5, 0. And if I write it as an ordered pair like you see there on the left, I know that -5 is my x and y is my 0. So I'm going to put -5 for my input and 0 for my output in my table based on that ordered pair. So then I'm going to go to the next point, and I'm going to highlight that one there. And I'm going to write it here. That's going to be the point -3, 1. And again, there's my x and my y, so I'm going to fill it into my table. -3, +1. Coming over here to the next point there that I'm highlighting, that point is going to be -1, 2. So my x is going to be -1, my y is 2. I'll go to this next point that I just highlighted. That point there is 1, 3. And again, your x is 1, so your y is 3. Moving on up that line, there's my next highlighted point. That one is 3, 4. So my x would be 3, my y would be 4. And finally, my last point here that I see on my graph is 5, 5. So my x is 5 and my y is 5. So let's take a look at another graph. In our next graph, we're not going to have the points plotted on there. We're going to have to find those points and mark those. So let's scroll down here and take a look at that. So here's my graph. So my goal starting out, I'm going to change my pen to a green color here. My goal is to find some places where this graph crosses the grid lines in a nice clean spot. So it looks like we've got one here. Looks like we might have one here. Maybe here. Maybe here. So let's see if we can identify what those points are there. So again, we want to remember that our input are our x values and our outputs are our y. Now this is just like what we did before, but now we had to actually mark the points. So I'm going to start with this one here on the left. That point there is -2, 6. So that means my x is -2 and my y is 6. Going over here to this next point there that I highlighted in the middle, that point is 0, 3. So my x is 0 and my y is 3. Moving on down that line, my next point there is going to be 2, 0, because I moved 2 to the right and then I moved 0 up and down. My last point that I'm going to highlight here is on the end, and that point is 4, -3. So my x would be 4 and my y would be -3. I hope this has been helpful.